We are ready to rock and roll.
Welcome to the Jared Squared podcast. I'm Jared, and that's Jared.
That's right, folks. And here we are today to talk to you a little bit about freedom of speech in the United Kingdom.
And what the is U.S.
And in the U.S. a little bit, because we want to sort of examine what we have here in the United States as far as our rights and compare them to what, in my opinion, is probably the, second most civilized country in the world, England, because they lost the Revolutionary War anyway.
They could be more civilized, though. I mean, honestly.
Well, yeah, if you've been to soccer matches, I know you've been to a lot of soccer matches and probably seen a great deal of unrest in your day.
Yes, but nothing like we've seen recently in the UK. So I don't know if y'all are aware, but 3 young girls were stabbed in the UK. Where was that in the UK? Liverpool? I really don't remember. Leeds? I really don't know. That's sad that we don't know. We would know.
They were very upset about it in Leeds, I can tell you that much.
Yeah. So talk about a little bit about, all right, so anyway, these 3 girls were stabbed, and now there's this massive unrest in the UK where there's riots, there's, destruction of property. So talk about that sort of in that light and talk about their freedom of speech rules and go through that a little bit. Whoa. And then I'm going to kind of talk about the U.S. and censorship at a social media level.
Very good. Well,
Southport. I'm looking it up right now. So a 17-year-old boy was charged with murder of 3 young girls in northwest England in Southport. They were 6, 7, and 9 years old.
Yeah, and apparently there was an English lady in one of these towns that put out a social media post that said that the stabber or the cutter, whatever he actually did, was an illegal immigrant from some Muslim-dominated country in the Middle East, or Africa. And once that happened, people all over the UK started to, and this is mostly British, British people, English people from there, complaining about immigrants come into their country and sort of not trying to assimilate to the culture. And it turned out, there were several posts, and it's what we're here about are these posts that got people put in jail in England over, alleged hate speech. So the posts, one of the ones, this guy Jordan Parler was a British fellow out there that made a post, encouraging people to go to this hotel. It's the Britannia Hotel in Leeds, and it's August 2nd and 3rd, or the 2 major nights of unrest in Britain. So what happened was people had already attacked, it was local people in Leeds had already attacked the Britannia Hotel, threw things at it, damaged it, and apparently the defendant, Mr. Parler, noticed the unrest on the news or social media, whatever it was, and he decided to make a post about it. And so he got on Facebook and wrote, "Every man and their dog should be smashing F out Britannia Hotel," referring to the Britannia Hotel and saying people should go down there and smash the F out of it. Now, and that's what wound up landing him in hot water. And it raised the question in my eyes, and Jared's as well, what sort of rights do they have in the United Kingdom when it comes to free speech? I mean, can you be arrested for a Facebook post? And I don't know.
It looks like Axel Rudacubana was the stabber, and he was 17. And I do remember that they released his name even when he was 17, even he was about to be 18, because it was a Liverpool judge. That's why I thought it was Liverpool. So it's actually happened in Southport. There's a Liverpool judge that released his name to hopefully stop the spread of misinformation. Because immediately after the stabbing, there was all these allegations of who it was. There were pictures online, and none of them were the actual murderer. And now, I mean, I guess he could be an alleged murderer. I don't think he's gone through his trial, but I believe lots of people saw him actually, murder the 3 girls. So I think that's, that's why we can probably with a decent amount of certainty say that he was indeed the killer, although we're sort of waiting for the UK to sort all that out. So go through the rules. I know they have a freedom of expression and the Human Rights Act. Kind of read through that and let us know, what does it say and how is it different than the U.S.? It's the Article 10 of the Human Rights Act, the freedom of expression.
Yeah, it says everyone has the right to freedom of expression, and this right shall include freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart information and ideas without interference by public authority and regardless of frontiers. And goes on to say that the exercise of these freedoms may be subject to formalities, conditions, limits, restrictions as are prescribed by law and are necessary in a democratic society. So, the drafters of the article of the Human Rights Act here obviously envisioned there would be, in whichever countries adopted it, states adopted it, there would be, additional laws and regulations to free speech. But so I guess sort of the point of it was to establish the right to free speech.
Yeah, and this is the EU law that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, this
is the
is
98 EU law of the Human Rights Act.
Exactly. And so
this is the law of the land in the UK up until they exited, up until Brexit, right?
I don't know if it's not still the law there.
Okay.
It may be that I don't know that that's a UK thing and or whatever, but yeah, it possibly could be. But based on what you're hearing, you're really not sure what the law could be out there, except to say that in researching, and I noticed there's a little bit of a difference between the UK right to free speech and our right to free speech here in the United States, and I think that the major difference being. The UK, they have what's called a negative right to free speech. And here in the United States, we have a positive right to free speech. So when we're talking about the negative right to free speech, we're talking about a situation where the rule is that, yes, you can express yourself and the government's not supposed to stop you from doing it. And it sounds kind of similar to, that any right to free speech, that's what it's about, the government not stopping you. But when, for example, like here in the United States, we have the positive right to free speech. So not only should the government not censor our speech, but they're also under an obligation to encourage us to exercise our right to speech. And they're responsible to, ensure that there is a right to free speech. In other words, the government is there to protect a right to free speech. They're not just prescribed from banning it, if you will.
Ah, I see. And I think that's an important distinction. And, in the U.S., I think probably more so than in the EU, we also have actions that are considered speech. So if you show up somewhere in a certain outfit, that is considered speech. If you decide not to speak, that is considered speech. So if you decide to have a certain water bottle and it has something written on it, that is also considered speech. And those are the, really more like freedom of expression. And those are also protected, as well as your right to convene at especially public areas and to protest and talk about all the things that are wrong with your ideas and why these things are bad. So, or maybe they're good and that's why you're there. Typically, you're complaining when you show up and protest, but you never know these days. So, talk a little bit about the U.S. Speech as well, and kind of those protections. And I think you've got some cases that you've gone through. Some flag speeches, some flag cases talking about speech. Black armbands in a school, whether or not you can wear it. Now, keep in mind, if you're in public school, that is an important distinction as to private school, because private school, you have no constitutional protections for speech in a private school. You do have one in a public school. So if you go to a state school or a parish or a county school anywhere else, you do have those protections, and the Constitution is backing you up. And that'll lead, I think, important into the next discussion we have about social media, where those protections are more like a private institution rather than a public institution. So talk about some of the speech in the U.S. and some of those cases that we have.
Well, I don't exactly have that page in front of me right now.
I've got it. I can go through them. So,
yeah.
And Jared did the research and sent this to me earlier, and I was adept enough to pull it up on my computer before we started talking. So we've got the West Virginia Board of Education versus Barnett, which is a 1943 case. This is specifically the right to not salute the flag. So think about this. In the middle, near the end of World War II, someone chose not to salute the flag, which I think back then would have been a very big deal.
Oh, yeah.
And they were singled out and reprimanded. However, West Virginia has been shown to violate the First Amendment because you have the right not to salute the flag. Whether the same right in sort of anywhere across the U.S., you can salute the flag now. You can kneel. You can do whatever you want. You can burn a flag. You do not have to salute the flag. Second case is Tinker versus Des Moines, which is where the students were wearing black armbands to protest the war, and again, this is a public school. This is in Iowa. And the important quote from this case was, "Students do not shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate." So this is in 1969, and sort of brought a whole swath of school-related constitutional cases, this being very important. The next one was offensive words and phrases in Cohen versus California from 1971. You have the right to use those, although they have a stricter scrutiny than regular speech when you have some offensive words, and we can get a little bit more into that in a second. Now, contributing money under certain circumstances to political campaigns. Buckley versus Vallejo in 1976 is also considered a freedom of speech. Who you want to support as your political candidate, that is certainly speech. And then Virginia Board of Pharmacy versus Virginia Consumer Council, and then the follow-up Bates versus State Bar of Arizona. This is a 76 case and then a 77 case. This is to advertise, and this is really where the Bates versus State Bar of Arizona sort of brought in your legal advertising. A constitutional right to advertise your products and professional services. There are some restrictions, but that is a constitutional right, where before that there were no lawyer billboards, there were no lawyer ads. And then symbolic speech, again, Texas versus Johnson is the seminal case in 1989, burning the flag. So if you want to talk about some of those, go through them and, just kind of give a general overview in your mind of, how speech is in the U.S. and sort of how it's evolved over time.
Well, yeah, and it's something that you can see and look at the time that it happened, and you can see you can sort of imagine exactly how big of a deal it must have seemed like to the observers. For instance, the 1943 case about saluting the flag. The end of World War II, like, that I don't know. As far as movies and TV tell me, that might be the only guy in the whole country that didn't want to salute the flag.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that.
So, this was a pretty outlandish statement to make,
As outlandish as the 49ers and the sort of seminal kneeling at the, before the game while, the Star Spangled Banner is being played. I think it's also a big deal. I mean, that was a huge sort of firestorm in the U.S.
Oh, he was out there kneeling, and he was like it's not just some guy you're not going to notice. I mean, he's a quarterback, Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I mean, look, hate him, like him, he had some balls to do that.
He had balls to do that, but all this about Colin Kaepernick would be playing if everybody wasn't so prude about the U.S. flag. It's not exactly true, because if he were good, they would play him regardless of his kneeling. They just think about this. Michael Vick was good. They gave him a bunch of chances. Look where it got him. But the bottom line, it proves that they will play someone. And this was before he came along. Ray Lewis was suspected of murder or driving a car. I'm sure Ray wasn't guilty because Ray is freaking awesome. But yeah, so
shout out to Ray Lewis.
Shout out to Ray Lewis, bro. Keep on cooling.
One of the greatest defensive players of all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe arguably.
Yeah, I mean, LT.
Oh, yeah.
LT.
I mean, LT was...
He never stopped.
56, was that his number?
He was number 56, wore it at the same time Swilling wore it here.
Yeah. They were both amazing.
They were both amazing, but Ricky Jackson, and a good friend of mine will sit here, and I will say that Ricky Jackson, in my opinion, was the greatest because, I love Ricky Jackson. And he just doesn't have maybe the numbers that LT had, but dude, remember that he was in a car accident and almost got decapitated.
Yes.
He was hurt, but he played the game, and that's the first time I ever saw people wearing little paper masks of a player. You know?
That's so true, man. And we gotta kind of talk about Mike Singletary too, if we're gonna bring them up.
Yeah, dude, Mike Singletary put a hit on you, and
Richard Dent.
Yeah, well, we had the Dome Patrol. That was the greatest four linebackers that ever walked the face of the earth. It's better than the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame, 40s or 50s or 30s lore, whatever it is.
And our offense was so bad we couldn't do anything.
That's right, but it wasn't.
And this is the New Orleans Saints, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, New Orleans Saints,
And we're getting way off track, but I kind of enjoy it.
It was Carl Smith was the problem, buddy. The offensive coordinator. Let me tell you, I heard all about Carl Smith for years in those stands. Man.
Yeah, that was the Aints.
Yeah.
It was a rough go if you were a Saints fan from really the beginning until Drew Brees.
Yeah, well,
honestly.
With Carl Smith, that son of a bitch would call Hebert. Probably was pissed off as hell. Bobby Hebert, awesome quarterback, was probably pissed off as hell because it'd be 3rd and 8, and this Carl Smith would have the guy run a 2-yard out, hit him on the sideline. Well, that doesn't get the first down, Carl. Anyway,
unbelievable. Brian Urlacher, another good one.
He
played in the Bears as well.
Yeah, he went from Notre Dame to the Bears.
Yeah, just speaking about Notre Dame, that's it.
Shout
out to my wife who hates Notre Dame.
Yeah.
She went to BC.
She went where?
BC, Boston College.
Oh, yeah. I love betting on Boston College most weeks. Not this week, maybe, but most weeks.
Matty Ice.
It's fun, yeah. It's just fun to say give me 100 on fucking BC. It's fun to say BC to your bookie. Of course, you don't need a bookie anymore.
So should we get back to Kaepernick and free speech?
Yeah.
That was fun aside, though. And if you really want us to do an all football podcast, we can.
We will put picks in that are mathematically derived from our patented and exclusive algorithm.
NFA, ladies and gentlemen, not financial advice.
Not financial advice. Just some good learning.
I like it.
All
That's
right.
a good idea. All right, so free speech in the U.S. is broad, and it is sort of varied. You can't incite lawless action. You can't burn draft cards. Was that O'Brien? Yes, the O'Brien case of 1968. That was a no-no. Now, you could make a fake draft card and burn it,
Yeah.
but not an actual draft card because it was, I mean, you wouldn't be able to do that now.
It's
because
government
I'm sure,
property.
Well, A, we have no draft, but if it was ever brought back, it would be certainly done through email
Yeah.
and letter, and you probably wouldn't have a card. Although the blockchain would solve a lot of those problems if y'all want to do that.
I think
Throwing it out there.
they might have a card because I think the whole point of having the draft card was probably to prove you had registered for the draft that was mandatory.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I think they would definitely have something like maybe you get a tattoo on your forehead. I don't know.
You can make obscene speech at a school-sponsored event, and you can advocate illegal drug use at a school-sponsored event.
I thought you could not.
Excuse me, you cannot. That is
Yeah.
correct. These are the things you cannot do. Excuse me. You cannot make obscene speech at a school-sponsored event, and you cannot advocate illegal drug use at a school-sponsored event. We do have a war on drugs. I believe it's still going on somewhere around the third quarter right now, I would say. And I think drugs are up about 6 or 7 trillion to 0. That's kind of about the stats right now. But we're hanging in there. And, you know, just a few more $1 billion and we're going to start scoring. That's my take on the war on drugs.
Yeah. I mean, mine is that, you know, we're dealing with something we can't control, or we don't give ourselves credit for being able to control it. Look, you know, perhaps the colonization of South America and Mexico, I mean, not really colonization. We'll take them on as partners, but they'll know who's in charge.
And so, of all those things you can't do, I remember in law school, you can't yell fire in a movie theater. That's not protected speech. Now, what about Trump's infamous speech and tweets from January 6th?
Well, you know,
That's an important question.
they are all...
Did they incite violence, right? Is that the bottom line?
Right, but there's no call to violence. And look, I can make a tweet that has no, you know, it could be no intent to cause any violence, no intent to cause anybody to be pissed off, but it just so happens to piss off people, and then they go crazy. Like, you know, if you have to determine someone's intent with what they write, I mean, the fact that they wrote it is one thing, and you can prove that they wrote it.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, I reading those tweets and that speech, I think it was certainly fiery, but I don't think it was a call to arms, so to speak. And it certainly wasn't a let's go attack the Capitol and take the country back. But some people think it was, and you know.
As I recall, he said, "March up there and peacefully protest." Or
That's
something.
correct. That's
you know, and,
essentially the words used.
Yeah, just peacefully protest. Now, I mean, you know, unless those that are decrying these words from him are, you know, have a guilty conscience about calling what happened with George Floyd, who died of a drug overdose. All those peaceful protests where I think courthouses were burned down, like a bunch of like chicken places got tore up, and all kind of nice, you know, little people just have stores, and unruly crowds were tearing it up. And then I think that there were certain people that were offering to help get people bailed out of jail for their civil disobedience.
That was an interesting time for me. I was actually traveling for a deposition in the middle of May 2020 to Boston, and I was supposed to quarantine myself. I followed all the rules. I then that was just strange flying during that time because the airport was completely empty.
Yeah.
You couldn't even get water because no one was selling water. All the vendors were closed. All of the water fountains were boarded up. And you can't bring water past the TSA.
Wow.
So I went into the bathroom and drank from the sink. So
Well,
I was freaking half dead from thirst because flight was delayed. I think to get to Boston, I had to fly to Chicago and then to Boston. And on the way back, I flew to Dallas. My flight was canceled. And that was the beginning of the riots in Dallas where they closed the interstate. And I got to watch it all from my room. And the sort of two different worlds apart, Dallas was quite interesting. I got to go to a Whataburger and just hang out as though there were no COVID at all. Boston was completely different. Everything was shut down. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't step without people completely losing it. It was two vastly different places, and it was rather interesting. But, I think if you want to switch over to, now that we're on talking about COVID, to the Murphy versus Missouri case. It's an interesting case. So the state of Missouri, the state of Louisiana, and I believe like 5 different plaintiffs sued in the Western District of Louisiana because they wanted to be in the Fifth Circuit. That's actually the answer, because we were a very conservative bench on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. I argued, well, not me personally, I was sitting at the appellant table for the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals a couple days ago. My co-counsel argued, and I sat there and took notes and looked at the judges and thinking perhaps, I hope we win, but not quite sure. But anyway, the state of Missouri and Louisiana sued to enjoin, meaning an injunction against the CDC, the White House, and other governmental officials and agencies from speaking with the social media platforms and censoring certain types of speech on those platforms. And the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed that there should be an injunction. This is in 23. That was a huge win in my mind for the censorship case. Then it goes to the Supreme Court, and they held that there was no standing for those people to enjoin. So the injunction was then removed, and the case is going to continue along, now back down at the Western District of Louisiana. But the vastly different opinions by the Fifth Circuit, where they talked about, the fact that there were grave concerns over the free speech and the sort of intervention of the state into deciding whether or not the speech was indeed valid or not, according to them. And then if it wasn't, then the places like Twitter and this is before Elon Musk took over, and Facebook would take them down. And then the Supreme Court said, no, there's no standing. An injunction is a very big deal, and you can't prove that this is going to happen again. And most of the accounts were reinstated at that point. So, everyone sort of relaxed. I mean, what do you think about the censorship? We may want to bring up Matt Taibbi and the Twitter files, which brought all of this to light. It's been an interesting few years for censorship, for sure.
Well, certainly, from my perspective, when the censorship issue got my attention, I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that why are we worried about First Amendment when we're talking about these private companies, private companies, blah, 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 down the line. Private companies that get to put what they want on their website, commercial speech, political, whatever it is. But obviously there are limits, but I couldn't get over that point. But then recently I found out from the news that the United States government talked to Facebook Mark Zuckerberg, and basically they told him that he needed to censor content, certain, and it was censor the content, censor what they're putting up based on the content of the speech. So I'm talking about they're attacking the speech itself, and so when you've got now you've got government involvement. So government is going to go ahead and censor free speech by exercising leverage over the over the people that are doing it, over the channels. And then it became a little more aware. Oh, I do see censorship issues. Okay, so it doesn't matter. I can get kicked off of Facebook, whatever, for whatever they say. I don't know that there's anything I can do about it. Like, I don't have a right to be a federal right to be on social media. I don't have that right.
Well, they have to treat you with equal protection, meaning, they can't get rid of all the white people. They can't get rid of all the black people. They can't get rid of all the women, the men. There are some basic protections due to the Commerce Clause where you've got to, take that hand evenly and not ban people for, protected classes. But really beyond that, they can do whatever they want. They can set up their own censorship. They can have, whatever they want. Any post of a dog they could get rid of if they wanted. And there's no constitutional protections for that. And that's totally fine. I think what you're mentioning, and I think that's really an important aspect, is that the CDC, which is a governmental agency, the White House, obviously a governmental agency, put their hand into that censorship box. And now I think the Constitution will come in and say, well, this is governmental action, and this is something protected by the Constitution. And keep in mind that Matt Taibbi really sort of broke this entire thing out when Musk bought X, Twitter. He gave the files over to Matt Taibbi, who was actually sort of a left-wing, really pro-Russian journalist, but not in a bad way. Just he'd lived in Russia and knew a lot about it.
What's the good way to be a Russian journalist? Pro-Russian, I guess.
I think if you look at it, so like Trump was supposed to be the Manchurian candidate, right? The one that, the story how, Russia won him the election because of their interference. And I think there's a lot of sort of crazy negative talk about being pro-Russian and the Russians are taking over our election, which,
Oh, definitely. But did you see who Putin, he said he's backing Kamala this time. He wants Kamala in.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I don't think that's just trying to, oh, dude, we're going to cover this up from a long time ago. That dude doesn't care. He invaded a country. He doesn't give a damn.
Yeah, I don't think he cares.
No. So... Yeah,
but I'm a big fan of Matt Taibbi and what he's done and sort of his sort of role in this. So he took these files and made a lot of them public and wrote, articles and had podcasts about them and talked about just his shock at how the involvement of top officials really at the Biden administration would go in and look at specific tweets and make them go away. Certain ones from James Woods, the
actor?
Yeah, the actor who was, a huge right-wing pundit, I would call him.
Yeah.
And so you would get an email from someone at high up in the Biden administration with a list of tweets, and Twitter would go in and then censor them.
Wow.
It was wild. It's a wild time. So the Fifth Circuit said, as a backdrop to all this, that, this is certainly constitutionally protected, and it does require an injunction because the executive branch is coming in and censoring Americans and affecting their free speech. Now, I think that also brings into question, is a social media platform a public forum enough that there should have some type of constitutional protections? as though it were, sort of the, think about in front of the courthouse and you go and you have speeches there. That's certainly a public forum. Is a social media platform considered a public forum, and should it be if it's not?
I think it should be, or it is, because there's not much barrier to entry, which is one thing I would consider in a public forum. Who can enter, who can speak, anybody. Yeah, it's a public forum. It's not. Let me qualify that and say I'm not saying there's a protected right to be in there, but for the things that are going on in there, you might as well call it a public forum.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
I do. It does, and I think, a public forum, and I think our ideas of a public forum are shifting, and I think that certain social media platforms, just think of the big ones, really are, a public forum, and like you said, there's the barrier of entry is extremely low. You obviously need a computer or a phone. Maybe not. Maybe you just go to the library and create your own Facebook account. So maybe you don't need that. Maybe you can become a speaker in the public forum by going into your local public library, logging in, creating your own account, and then jumping in the fray. You can probably watch TikTok. I don't know if those are banned at the public library. They might be.
Probably should be.
Maybe.
I mean, but I love TikTok, except for the fact that the Chinese Communist Party is involved in it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Maybe. Allegedly.
We don't know for sure. There's been hearings at Congress about it. What about Jordan Parler? I'm going to go back to that. He got 20 months for writing Facebook posts.
Yeah.
Or Twitter posts. Which one was it?
It was a Facebook post with him.
Facebook, yeah.
Yeah.
Every man and their dog should be smashing fuck out Britannia Hotel. I mean, that's a good quote. I think it's funny.
Yeah, it's funny. And I mean, look, he's basically saying everyone should do something. They were already doing it at the time. And he's like, I think it's cool. You should be doing that. And that's all he said. He's going to jail for it.
Yeah, and he has a good
20 months.
A good saying, "The life of Riley."
Yes.
Meaning, like, so he's saying that the people that he said are coming over here are living off of our tax dollars and getting the life of Riley, meaning that they're living their best life, right?
Yeah.
Out there, and there was a recent YouTube video that I watched of someone that confirmed that you would get a nice hotel, you would get money in the EU and certainly in the United Kingdom, and you would get a place to stay and money to use for free phone, free food, lots of money, maybe not lots, but enough to live. And it's Mr. Parler certainly was upset about it, and it's causing some problems, I think, in the EU. And so their solution is to crack down on social media posts and put people in jail. I find that probably not the best PR in the world.
It's a bad look for the UK, you know, and I mean, it's a bad look. You've got the people in your country are upset. And when they try to express that they're upset, you tell them not to do so and put them in jail. And look, I'm looking at the sort of a transcript from when this Jordan Parler was sentenced, right? And so, and I know, and so he was. The maximum sentence was 7 years in prison for the offense of publishing written material in order to stir up racial hatred.
Woo.
So that was kind of...
That's juicy.
That's what he did. He's publishing material to stir up racial hatred.
That's more than domestic violence with strangulation here in the Louisiana.
7 years. Yeah, strangulation. I mean, that's a relatively new thing they added to the law because of how bad strangling is for people.
It's
Not funny.
no, but it adds it adds a couple years when there's strangulation involved.
Yeah, and I mean, look, and the thing about it is, 7 years for publishing something, dude. Really, like.
That's a lot.
And now, you're looking at it and, okay, he didn't, I don't know that I mean, I guess it was a scary argument to him to try and make, look, I wasn't inciting racial hatred. The people were already attacking the hotels where the immigrants were staying.
Right,
Racial hatred was going on. I wasn't inciting it. It wasn't, I was just saying, by damn. But anyway, what you get is somebody that's going to have to go to prison for 20 months for publishing something.
Yeah, which is I think wild. People here in the U.S. would think that's wild, and I think that sort of leads again back into the censorship in the Murphy versus Missouri case, and how the U.S. Supreme Court found that there was no standing. So basically what they said was, because there was no showing that this was going to happen again to specific people, meaning that specific people in the U.S. government were going to speak to specific people at, say, Facebook, and were going to then ban a specific account, there was no standing for the injunction. This is really the whole case is about the injunction, because the Fifth Circuit allowed it, the Supreme Court denied it. So now there is no injunction. So now you can speak to as a Biden cabinet member or somebody in the Biden as a top Biden official. You can, as an arm of the executive branch, reach out to Twitter and say, or X, and say, hey, let's ban this. Although we know that's not going to work now, and I don't know how much it's happening now. Probably a lot less would be my guess.
I think the cat's out of the bag on that deal, and now that the public knows just the extent of government interference, I think there's going to be, I think it should be more than natural to pay attention to which of these platforms is censoring speech, shadow banning people, if you will. And shadow banning, you'll never figure that one out, whether they're doing it or not.
Yeah, so that essentially means you're showing up less often than you should in the algorithm. So your shows are going to play fewer people are going to watch them, and it overall is a diminishing of your account. And there's a sort of important quote, and by the way, Amy Coney Barrett,
yeah,
who's from right up the street, is the one who authored this opinion, and this is important, I believe. So one of the main people, I believe Hines is her name, Jill Hines. She was the Health Freedom Louisiana was the name of her group that advocated against masks and against vaccines. One of her posts on Facebook, the White House did in fact try to get it banned, but Facebook had already banned it. So that was one of the reliant facts why they denied the injunction, because they said they can't show that there was actual government, a hand that canceled it, even though the government wanted to, but Facebook had already done it. So it was at this point a private organization banning her rather than the arm of the executive branch. And she posted and reposted Robert F. Kennedy Jr. posts, which also got her in hot water. And her, let me get that right again, the Health Freedom Louisiana, there were certain groups of that were banned and essentially what was called deplatformed, where their group was completely deleted in July of 2021. So that's their claims against Facebook and against government, and Murthy is the attorney general, excuse me, the surgeon general, which is why he is cited in this case, because he was the one who went and is the face of what is the proper speech for COVID and what is allowed and what isn't, and what isn't misinformation. So Dr. Murthy is the one that can establish that according to this, government hierarchy we have of the CDC and, appointed by Biden. So what do you think about all that?
I think for one thing, I am certainly glad that the CDC doesn't have all the freedom it had to run amok like it did before the Loper Bright case.
True.
And I think that appointing someone to be the truth finder is kind of like it's similar to appointing a bishop in their own church. Look, we're going to put our people in these positions. They're going to be the ones that decide true or false. I mean, that's preaching almost, or it's certainly it smacks of some sort of a religion or cult, and I think that goes. There's a lot of that on the left side of the aisle.
And I think those censorship. We're getting back to that a little. I think this opinion written by Barrett is really, it's interesting because it's alluding to the fact that this was done, that the Surgeon General and the CDC had guidelines, and that really Hines, I think, she's the person who had the Louisiana Facebook group that was canceled. She had according to Justice Barrett, had the best case that, there was harm and that future harm is likely. However, and this is a quote, still she has not shown enough. So she has shown harm. She has shown government intervention, but she hasn't shown enough to allow for an injunction. So, and really, I think that is what the case is really about, is the injunction. So were there damages? Probably not.
No.
And so really the case, once it has now not allowed the injunction and the injunction has been dismissed, I think this case may just float away and not do much from here. But, it does show that this at least did happen, maybe not enough to rise to an injunction. And I think, the Supreme Court is in a position with the conservative justices that, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't uphold it. So to me, it really is just not quite enough. And I'm still of the opinion that the Supreme Court is right most of the time, or at least a decent amount of the time. And, I think the makeup of this court in a case like this, they probably made the right decision, even though I'm a little surprised. What do you think about that?
Well, I think they're running a clean show, and she just didn't see going all the way with it. I've got to say that I didn't read that case like you did.
Well, now this, I think, if they had upheld this injunction, I think this would be one of the largest and most, almost to the point of where the court would almost be legislating if they had upheld the injunction. I just feel like it is such a reach of power to stop the White House, to stop the CDC, to stop the entire executive branch from reaching out to a public forum. And to me, that is quite a step. If the courts had done that, I think that would be a very bold move.
Right. But, I would think with the right case, like if they had someone, if it was likely to happen again, like if the whichever set of politicians it was likely they were going to censor speech on a certain issue next election, or certain comments to make themselves look better. If they are getting an advantage for themselves, I mean that's the kind of thing. Political speech is very protected when it comes out of the mouth of a politician, right?
Certainly.
And when Joe Citizen is making his statements online, well, is he entitled to a certain protection? Well, maybe, but certainly he shouldn't. One side shouldn't be allowed to silence him unless he's broken some other law. Like, it can't just be that they're disagreeing with him or don't like it. And words like, disinformation and stuff like that, you can't tell me what's true or false about the pandemic, really, except that a lot of people died, and
a lot more were supposed to die.
A lot more was supposed to die, and that the inoculations weren't. They didn't prevent you from getting it. It's
You should probably go back and read this. It's really fascinating. One of the things I found fascinating is, at least until July 2022, and maybe beyond that, Facebook sent a monthly COVID insight report to the White House and the Surgeon General. This report was the top 100 vaccine-related posts, and whether or not Facebook took action against them. So there was an email in June. Facebook said, should we continue to send these reports? The official at the White House reported that he would normally say we are good to discontinue, but he wanted to keep the reports as we are ramping up for vaccines for children under 5. And this is back in June of 2022. So the communications were not just from the White House or the Surgeon General or the CDC to, say, Facebook or others. It was indeed Facebook and others giving information to the White House. So this, to me, was really a sort of setup system that was created to, and when systems are created, especially with governmental agencies, them dying on the vine is highly unlikely. So maybe what's the next COVID pandemic that they're getting information about? Maybe it's something to do with the UK. I don't know. These are the kind of things that I think are sort of troubling and worrying, for this type of action. And, maybe they should have enjoined the executive branch. Man, that would have created such an intense fight, I believe. But maybe it's time to have that fight.
It's a fight along the lines of the separation of powers.
Yeah.
Marbury and Madison, and it's that it would be sort of a very. It would be litigation that cuts to the base of law in this country. The separation of what can the president do, and can the courts tell the president he can't do something?
Yeah, I mean they can, but to the extent that enjoining all communications with someone like Facebook, I think is sort of a bold, large step. And I don't know how this is going to come out, this case, at the end. Certainly the legs were taken out of it when the Supreme Court denied or, canceled the injunction. So, and that was very recent. I mean, this is a couple months ago. So, the case is still ongoing, and we'll see where it lands in the Western District of Louisiana. We'll certainly follow it. The Fifth Circuit then already has ruled that, according to this, we're, dismissing the injunction. That's gone, and now the case will continue. So, and I haven't read the petition or the complaint, so I don't know, what type of causes of action are being asked for. I really just know about the injunction, as I thought that was such an interesting, update to this case and really to censorship and free speech in this country, and where it stands as of today.
In my understanding, it's very difficult to get a federal injunction. I mean, the federal courts, I think that's not something no court really wants to do it, but, federal court, I think it's especially difficult to get them to say it goes along with their guidelines.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I will say that the sovereign injury as a basis for asserting standing by the states, the court said that was a thinly veiled attempt to circumvent the limits on parens patriae standing, meaning that the states do not have standing to bring the action against the federal government, which is, I think an interesting ruling. And, so that was sort of wiped out. We'll see what those individual plaintiffs have, if anything, after, this case has essentially been neutered. So
yeah,
we'll see. The Fifth Circuit everyone was kind of really excited to see the showdown at the Supreme Court, and kind of fell like a dud.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
No. So that was rather an interesting case. Murphy versus Missouri, you can get it online, folks. It's very easy to find. It's a 2024 opinion that came out June 26, 2024. It was argued in March, and it was picked up in 2023 on the writ. So I think you should all read it. I think it's fascinating. At least read the syllabus, which is, maybe 6 pages. It kind of goes through the highlights. I did find it interesting that Murthy's first name is Vivek, just like Vivek Ramaswamy.
Ramaswamy.
But this is Vivek Murthy, the Surgeon General. So I wonder, if they're from similar backgrounds, if they have the same name. So anyway, the preliminary injunction's gone. The Fifth Circuit was wrong to do so, and that there's no standing that plaintiffs can demonstrate to show a substantial risk that in the near future they will suffer an injury that is traceable to a government defendant and redressable by the injunction that they seek. So essentially, you're not going to have, again, that specific person at the government reach out to a specific person at Facebook, and then Facebook is then going to take one of these plaintiffs' specific group or profile and then cancel it, deplatform it. So no injunction.
Wow.
Yeah. That's wild, huh?
It is.
So I don't know, what else do we need to do today, or is that enough?
I think that's enough, man.
Fantastic. We've hit 59 minutes.
Good.
And I think we probably only have to deduct 3 of your outbursts.
That's fine.
I think we're good.
It's less than last time.
Yeah, it's a record.
Yeah.
We have them on file. So if you ever go to the UK, we're going to post it on your Facebook and see if you get arrested.
Good. I challenge the UK to extradite me.
That's fantastic.
Oh, wow. That could be on there. That might make it, huh?
I think we need to leave
that should start. That should be the opening.
I think that's fantastic.
Yes.
That should be the opening. Now, you want a hook? Ladies and gentlemen, that's a hook. That is how you create social media content. A hook. Get them in the first 30 seconds. If it's not interesting, no one's going to watch it. That's why everyone likes shorts. My kids devour shorts like it's candy.
I'm calling you out,
Long-form content, I think your users that actually listen to it are better and like what you're saying and are more loyal, but you're not going to grow as fast if you don't have those shorts like pumping it.
Yeah.
It's the gas that makes everything go.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
So,
very exciting.
Do we have any shout-outs today?
Just shout out to the British Prime Minister.
Yeah, I like that. Who is the British Prime Minister?
Doesn't matter. I think he's the Labour Party.
Keir?
Yeah, so probably that means in Britain you believe that men can go into labor.
I like that.
Is that accurate?
That's good.
That's
yeah.
Are they leftists? Are they liberals, if you will? Liberal.
I
That's a funny
believe
word.
so. I would say yes.
Yeah, I think so.
I would say they are. Yeah, Keir Starmer. I looked it up. He doesn't look English. He probably is. He is from the Labor Party. That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. So he's a lefty, you know.
Yeah, Boris Johnson
Yeah, Boris.
is the one I remember the most.
What about Tony?
Other than David Cameron and Tony Blair, I think was, he had one of the longest tenures in my mind.
Yeah, Margaret Thatcher
Let's look
was
this
there
up.
a while.
I'm curious, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we're going to look this up. Okay, so Tony Blair was 10 years and 57 days.
Ooh.
Margaret Thatcher, 11 years, 209 days. From 79 to 90. What a vast expanse she had. That was quite incredible. And I'm just going through here. That looks to me to be one of the longest in history.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I
It's
will
an
say
algorithm.
Winston Churchill was only 3 years, 162 days, from 51. That doesn't make sense.
No.
What is this? What is this?
He was there
at?
during the war.
Oh, I'm aware.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. He was 5 years and 78 days from 40 to 45, then lost. The Labor Party came in, then won again from 51 to 55 for 3 years and 162 days. So that's 8 years, almost 9 years. So
Yeah.
he was up there. Another long tenure. Let's see. We're going through, see if anybody can beat Margaret Thatcher. What are the odds of that on the over?
Margaret Thatcher?
Yeah.
Oh, she was there. It had to be 15 years.
No, it was 10. I think I just
10?
looked. Oh, wait. Robert Jenkinson, 1812 to 1827. 14 years, 306 days.
Yeah.
So Margaret is now, William Pitt the Younger, 1783 to 1801. 17 years and 86 days.
Did he send anybody that turned anything into Pittsburgh, maybe?
Oh, here's another one. We've got Frederick North, 1770 to 1782, 12 years, 59 days, which, as you know, that is an important time in U.S. history. In 1776, Frederick North was in charge in the UK. Let's see. Henry Pelham, 10 years. Here we go. Robert Walpole, 1721 to 1742. 20 years, 315 days. So the longest prime minister was the first.
Yeah.
And he died in 1745 and was born 300 years before us.
Yeah.
Robert Walpole, born in 1676, ladies and gentlemen.
1676.
Yeah. So there you go. List of UK prime ministers. And, David Cameron and certainly Margaret Thatcher and Winston Churchill would be, I believe, the most famous to people alive today. Unless you're there now, Keir Starmer may be the most famous because he is the current, who just became, looks like in the 5th of July, 2024, Labor Party.
Yeah, and we're talking about people with long-standing leaders, great leaders, long-standing jobs. Some of them are great. Pete Rozelle, 29 years, 1960 to 1989.
That's good.
His name was on a lot of footballs.
Sure. Yeah.
And he was a classy leader, The guy that took, after that, though, Paul Tagliabue wasn't bad. He did it for 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
But now we got Roger Goodell, 2016 to the present. Come on, Roger. Roger, the fair play Dodger.
I mean, we would still have him, wouldn't we?
I guess I would have him if he wanted to retort any of my claims.
Can we talk about Bountygate if he comes?
Yeah, let's talk about Bountygate.
Greg
You're not
Williams?
yeah,
Was he
Greg Williams, the
Guilty?
Saints linebackers coach.
Was he guilty?
He's guilty of being a snitch, and he deserves a couple stitches, possibly. But that's not a call to violence. He actually deserves an atomic wedgie.
So anyway, he was the Saints defensive coordinator, and apparently said that there was a bounty where they would choose a player from the other team, and if you injured that player, you would get a bonus. That's essentially what the NFL claimed. After the Saints participated in the 2009 NFC Championship game with Brett Favre. That was where I think I was there at the game.
Me too, yeah.
We hurt Favre.
Yeah, we hit...
I didn't see anything really illegally about it.
No.
I don't know that it was Brett Favre specifically. What I think it was the opposing quarterback, and I want to crush him. Isn't that what football's all about?
Yeah, look, it wasn't a cheap shot. Favre never said... No, it wasn't. There weren't a bunch of cheap shots. Favre didn't complain about it. But they said we had the bounty, which my understanding is that this is a long-standing tradition in football. It's they probably got in a little trouble because the bounties got a little higher because guys are making more money. Like Jerry Glanville, I heard he would get him to knock out a guy for $1,500. You know.
I mean, and that's a decent sort of bonus that you may want, right?
It's decent, but now the players, most of the players are making $90,000 or $100,000 a game, so you can't get them to spit for $1,500.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and then so it looks like the defensive assistant Mike Cerullo was the whistleblower.
Oh.
That sort of came forward, and he was the one that kept track of the payments and the pledges for the Saints. So, the bounty gate I think was a decent big deal.
It was a major fuck over.
Yeah, the Saints got fucked.
The coach had to sit out.
Our coach had to sit out for an entire year
over that.
Mm-hmm.
Over because of the statements of a few malcontents, Peyton had to be out.
Yeah.
So it sucked, man. The whole thing sucked. Up yours, Goodell.
Yeah, for sure. But I think there was a suit filed. We should probably go through that suit next time.
Yeah.
Maybe.
We could.
Or we could just say screw it and do whatever we want.
We'll just do, we don't want to promise anything this time because then we'd have to read something between now and then. This way we could come out, just go off the chest, speak from the heart, and we're good to go, man.
I like that. Yeah, we did notes. We took our time, and we hopefully will earn your like and subscribe.
Yeah.
And now we're in podcasts everywhere.
Yeah, please hit that like and subscribe button. You can mash it. Mash that button, if you will.
Tickle it.
Tickle it.
I'm ready.
Me too, Hoss.
So this has been episode 3.
That's
of
right.
The Jared Squared podcast. And we are working on getting better lighting and sound. So just bear with us as we get these things moving. It'll be better in the future once we have the Joe Rogan budget. We'll be fine.
Yeah, so we need subscribers to get there, folks.
That's right.
I mean, this, you can just pretend like this is my GoFundMe page, but I'm not asking you for any money.
That's right.
Just hit that like button. Keep watching them videos.
Thanks, audience. We appreciate you. We love you, and we'll see you later.
Be good and be fair.